Now, it's 2 years since 1 million Rohingya were forced from their homes by mass atrocities in Myanmar. In a joint statement released today, 61 local and international NGOs have called for human rights for all to be recognised in Rakhine State, where that drama unfolded in 2017. The NGOs have also called for Rohingya refugees to have a role in decision-making about their own lives, including conditions for their return to Myanmar. Now, to discuss that, we're joined by Athena Rayburn of Save the Children, that NGO in Bangladesh. Athena, thanks for talking to us on France 24. Now, you're at the coalface of that crisis in Bangladesh. Just give us a sense of what the living conditions are for Rohingya refugees where you are.
Absolutely. It's now been almost 2 years to the day that Rohingya refugees started to cross the border into Bangladesh. Now we have just over 900,000 refugees in Cox's Bazar, with over 500,000 of those who are children. Since then, they have been living in squalid, cramped, damped conditions in temporary shelters that are extremely vulnerable to landslides and flooding. The host community in Cox's Bazar has also been bearing the impacts of this environmentally, socially, and economically. This population is extremely vulnerable and completely reliant on external aid. At this stage, 8 months into the year, we have only 34% of the funding needed to respond to this crisis.
And Athena, just for viewers who don't remember how this all kicked off 2 years ago, give us a sense of how this happened. What led to hundreds of thousands of people leaving their homes and leaving the country?
2 years ago, the Myanmar military engaged in what's described as clearing operations at the time. What we know and we have evidence of is that people were experiencing human rights violations. Many of the children that we work with have told us about atrocities that children should never have to see. Many of them witnessed their parents being murdered and family members and saw their villages burn as they fled across the border into Cox's Bazar.
And do they want to go back, Athena? Are they afraid to go back? Or to what extent? Give us a sense of how many would like to go back, I guess.
Almost without exception, the Rohingya refugees that we speak to tell us that they want to go back. Even children that have experienced these atrocities say that they want to go back to Myanmar. They want an education, they want a future, they want access to rights. But they do not want to go back to the Myanmar that they fled from 2 years ago. They need to have guarantee of rights and freedom from violence in order to return safely and for a sustainable return.
And to what extent are the Myanmar authorities listening to NGOs like yours, and to what extent are they open to the kind of pressure you are exerting for the right conditions to be put in place for a return?
We are calling for the government of Myanmar to address the root causes of this crisis. In order to do that, there must be provisions made to provide the Rohingya with citizenship and freedom of movement. The other piece of this that must happen is that perpetrators of crimes against the Rohingya must be held accountable. This is why Save the Children is calling for the UN Security Council to refer the situation in Myanmar to the International Criminal Court. Rohingya children deserve justice and they deserve a future, and we cannot move forward without those pieces.
So that's for, I guess, the future of the Rohingya. But what about right now? I've been reading about, for example, a crisis in education where you are, and talk of a lost generation. Is there anything that can be done here and now to, what more can be done, I guess, to provide the right conditions so that they're not suffering and losing out on a chance for the future?
The first step in that is to make sure that all Rohingya are engaged in all of these conversations. They know what they need and they have a right to determine their future. The second step is that we must continue to, the international community must continue to support with resources and funding to ensure that we can continue to provide a quality principled humanitarian response to the Rohingya. We must make sure that they do not become a lost generation, that they do not become forgotten. The international community must continue to pay attention.
OK, Athena, thank you so much for those thoughts from Bangladesh. Athena Rayburn of Save the Children.